Hey everyone, welcome back to another stock market outlook video sponsored by MarketSmith. And this week we finished on a very strong note on both the Nasdaq and the S&P 500. On the Nasdaq, we made a nice push off the 50 SMA here, this red line here, and now we're back above that key moving average as well as the 21 EMA. So as of right now, the intermediate trend and the short-term trend is up, and we'll see if we can kind of push off this next week and challenge these intermediate all-time highs and this 14,000 level. Looking at the S&P 500, as always, is a little bit stronger than the Nasdaq, right near all-time highs at this point. A nice support here at the 21 EMA, and then once again, a very strong close to end the week on this Friday. And we'll see on this index if we can kind of keep pushing up next week and break out to all-time highs, which would be very bullish for the overall market. However, as always, the growth stocks are still weaker. We're seeing some basing action from the IWO, the Russell 2000 Growth Index, and overall, we're still below this level right here, this kind of swing high, as well as a declining 50 SMA and this 300 level. So for things to really get going, I want to see a nice trend like this above the 21 EMA, and a start to that would be pushing through this level and getting back above all the key moving averages and challenging this pivot and then eventually all-time highs within this consolidation. And look at the IWM, kind of smaller caps in general. This looks a little bit better. We're right below this pivot, so that's constructive. A nice upside reversal action above the key moving averages on Thursday. And once again, if we can follow through and break through this pivot and challenge these all-time highs, that would be very bullish overall. So moving on, as always in this video, we'll talk about potential new leadership. Then we'll move on to the leaders of 2020, then the indexes on a weekly time frame, and then go over my focus list, a sentiment from a few different sources. They'll move on to the IBD Big Picture article, and then finally the Wishing Wealth blog GMI signal. So if you do enjoy my analysis, please go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one every single week. So starting with UPST, overall this was up almost 9% on the week. Nice push off the lows here, 2-2 reversal on this Wednesday, then a 3-bar break to the upside on this Thursday. However, on this day, we had a kind of failed breakout to all-time highs on higher volumes. So definitely a negative here, and my expectation really would be some intermediate term weakness, but we'll see if we can kind of tighten up near this pivot and present another potential entry point. I'm sure it frustrated a lot of people, myself included, on this day, but we'll see and keep this on the watch list and see if we can kind of tighten up and try to break out once more. And when this goes, I think it has a lot of potential based off the push off the lows and a nice volume coming in, a lot of pocket pivots along this right-hand side. So that is UPST. Overall, ended the week on a bad note, but still one to watch for sure, and definitely a high potential stock based on the fundamentals. Those annual estimates are superb. So looking at CRCT, this is just trending nicely. And let me actually go ahead and add a 10-day moving average right here, just because I think it's just trending beautifully above that level based on the kind of eye test. So overall, adding that, look at that nice trend above that short-term moving average and the 21 EMA. This looks great, definitely short-term extended, but trending nicely for sure. Although we are making higher highs on lower volumes, so maybe it could be slowing down a little bit to end out the week. Looking at Ford, this had a beautiful continuation here from the breakout last week. A really strong move on this Thursday, and then on this Friday, a little bit of downside reversal action, but once again, very short-term extended, so this is to be expected, and the short-term trend and all the key moving averages are going up. NVIDIA as well continues to be very, very strong. It is above this kind of clothesline, so keep that in mind, and definitely short-term extended, but I'll be watching this one very, very carefully. And overall, this volume coming in is very, very impressive. A lot of pocket pivots, and this whole move off the bottom is incredibly strong, and you have to have this on your radar in general, and overall the semiconductors itself, that group is also acting quite well. If we go to SMH quickly, this is trending nicely up the right-hand side, and if this breaks out, that would add support to NVIDIA. Looking at RBLX, the next potential leader, once again trending above the 10-day, looks very strong. Definitely short-term extended, but if it presents a nice kind of shelf here, that's a place to get in for maybe a swing entry. And once again, very strong volume, a lot of pocket pivot volume signatures recently after it's broken out. So true pocket pivots are within the base, but still it's good to see a lot of volume to the upside during this uptrend. Next up, we've got NUE, and overall trending nicely above the 10-day here and the 21 EMA. No real entry point. It's not quite tight at this point, but it did have a nice move on this Tuesday for sure. Then pulled back, consolidated to the 10-day and had a nice move upward on this Friday, 2-2 reversal, although it was on lower volume. DEN also trending above that 10-day, looks very strong, as well as that 21 EMA, and really the 21 EMA has contained pretty much this entire move from the IPO base here. AMAT not as strong as NVIDIA, but still showing something here. And overall, nice move off the right-hand side. No huge volume spikes in here, which is another sign that it's weaker versus NVIDIA, but really just switching in between these two charts, you can clearly see which is the kind of leader within SMH. But regardless, this is acting reasonably well. 2-2 reversal here on Friday, and we'll see what happens next week. ASO, nice action here, trending above the 10-day and 21 EMA, nice support here. And overall, nice action on this Friday, upside reversal here on this inside day to end out the week with a strong closing range. App is another recent IPO that's acting very well, broke out or re-broke out of its IPO base on this Friday after 2 kind of consolidation days within this trading range, and looks pretty good. We'll see if it can kind of continue to the upside. The one drawback here is there's no real volume coming in on this breakout, so ideally you want to see huge volume like we saw with Roblox as it took out the IPO base pivot. LRCX, another kind of SMH name, looks decent, nice action on Friday, 2-2 reversal to the upside. There was kind of a failed breakout here, so that's one negative, but you can see you probably wouldn't have taken that because volume definitely wasn't higher on that day. But overall, we'll see if we can kind of retake this pivot here and push up and trend above the key moving averages. STLD also trending nicely here above the 21 and 10-day moving averages, as well as the 50 SMA looks strong. VSTO pullback on lower volume after a strong move up on higher volume looks constructive, and maybe it pulls back to the 10-day, then pushes off from there, or decides to decline all the way to this base pivot at around 38.36. Path, another recent IPO that I had my eye on, but really it didn't present an entry point last week. You had 2 consolidation days after a kind of failed breakout here on Friday, and then a huge downside reversal expectation breaker, and then just went sideways and then broke to the downside from these 2 days. And so far, it looks just like it needs more time, although it could present an inside day and up next week if it breaks out above these highs, and we'll see what happens. But overall, not a great closing range on this day or this day. And on a push up, we really want to see volume come in as well. There's really only been 1 day of really good volume, and that's here on the 11th of May. And last up, we've got Zim, which broke to the downside here below the 21 EMA for the first time in quite a while. Pretty much, yeah, this looks like the first close actually right here. We had a close below the 21, but overall, very negative here, high volume, and maybe this pulls back to the 50-day, but definitely I'll be watching this one because this is a super powerful move from its IPO. So overall, nice action from potential new leadership, and we'll see if we can kind of fall through next week and lead the market higher. Moving on to the old leaders, let's go through SKLZ, which finally retook that anchored VWAP from the highs, which had presented as resistance a few points prior during this downtrend. So maybe it's finally turning, nice volume to the upside here, but it's still very suspect since it's quite far from all-time highs, still 56% from all-time highs. So maybe a good swing entry here if that's your style, but a nice move up and then kind of 2 consolidation days to end the week. And this anchor VWAP looks like it's kind of shifted to support, at least for the time being. So good to see that, as well as all the key moving averages now below price and potentially supporting an uptrend. CELH, nice breakout here, 2-2 reversal and 3-bar break as well. And then a beautiful breakout from the base pivot. So really you want to get an entry through these highs or these highs before the true base breakout, and that kind of gives you the confidence to weather this kind of inside day more confidently. And then we had nice fall through to the upside on Friday as well, but really strong volume as well coming in on this breakout. Very promising action, and we'll see what happens to this former leader. Futu, nice breakout on Friday, 2-2 reversal as well, or actually inside day and up on Friday, as well as a 3-bar break to the upside. And I'll be watching this for fall through. This kind of level here at 164 has been resistance. You had a big move down off the secondary offering, but we'll see what happens kind of this time, all the key moving averages are supporting price nicely. And yeah, we'll see what happens. Very strong estimates still from this stock. NEO, nice move up and then kind of just going sideways and quiet to end the week. Still below the 200-day, but all the key moving averages or short-term key moving averages are below price at this moment. And it's pretty tight along this right-hand side below this pivot. So I'll be watching this for next week. PLTR is similar, just kind of going sideways here to end the week. Nice volume to the upside here, and then 2 consolidation days on Thursday and Friday. EXPI is still below a declining 50 and the 200-day, but the short-term moving averages are now below price. Twitter, nice move up and a nice day here on this Friday, but you had some kind of erratic action here on this Thursday, but I really like how it's above this high volume close and staying above it versus if we go to pins, which I'm sure we'll get to in just a second. If we go to pins, this is still below that key level. So at this moment, this is actually resistance while Twitter was able to push through that and make a move towards those key moving averages, but still has the declining 50 SMA to deal with next week. Apps still below that key moving average as well, but the short term are now below price. And once again, this high volume close is a key pivot point for me. Above it is good, and I'll consider an entry if it presents a pretty good entry point. And below it, I'll just leave it alone. But regardless, I'm mostly focused on stocks now, trending near all-time highs and above all their key moving averages. That's kind of the higher probability setups for my type of style. Net, nice move here, and I've got a lot of stuff going on here. So let's switch over to here. But regardless, it's nicely above all the key moving averages here, and this point will be a big test at around 87. But I would like to see it kind of pull back here, drift down back towards the key moving averages, and then set up a consolidation pivot, and I'll consider an entry at that point. Corsair still just basing here. TSM still basing, going quiet the past few days. SE also forming a nice pivot here at around 262, so I'll be watching that one. Nice volume coming in as well, and almost a 2-2 reversal on this Friday. Etsy still below all the declining key moving averages, but it is staying above this level, which is a good sign. But once again, this is not a leader at this point anymore, and it really has a lot to prove before I would consider an entry. Upwork back above the key moving averages and a nice move, but then not a great day on this Thursday. But now we'll see if it can kind of push upwards towards this pivot and this kind of form a resistance level at around 50 or so, which has been resistance here, here, as well as here, and here as well. Shop also kind of pulling back on lower volume, forming some pivots here at around 1,285. So we'll see if we can kind of push up from the 21 EMA to challenge that spot. SQ is below all the key moving averages, so really has a lot to prove here. Fiverr, all the key moving averages are kind of consolidating at one point, which is constructive. But once again, it's below the 200-day, so it has a lot to prove before I would consider an entry, but it does have a kind of consolidation pivot at 209.67. Zscaler, after the earnings breakout, it's kind of leaked to the downside. Huge volume here, so this point is definitely a pivot here for me. TDOC, still nothing to do here. It's in just a downtrend here below a declining 50, and looks like it was rejected at the 21 area here late last week. Tesla still acting not like a leader, honestly. Declining 50 SMA at this point, still just basing out within this range right here. Pins, where I talked about. Roku, below all the key moving averages as well. Doesn't look great, but it is kind of forming some pivots here at around 355 or so, as well as all the key moving averages. If you can push through that, that'll be very constructive. GRWG above the 21 EMA, but kind of struggling with that 200-day at this point and the declining 50, so it really has to push through those levels for me to be interested. EMPH below the key moving averages as well. Peloton pulling back last week on low volume. CrowdStrike after earnings, not a great reaction, so we'll see if this can kind of recover next week and challenge these pivots around 225 or so. And lastly, Twilio also pulled back last week below all the key moving averages. So overall, some of these are acting better than others. Some are still very far from all-time highs. And regardless, I think we do have to kind of move on from most of these and look for new opportunities that present themselves in the market every single week. So that's a quick summary of the old leaders. And now let's move on to the market indexes on a weekly time frame. So overall, looking at the QQQ, nice upside reversal action here. And looks like it regained that 10-week after an undercut and it is in a nice stage 2 uptrend, and the expectation is sideways or higher from this closing range. Looking at SPY, the S&P 500 ETF, once again, nice kind of action here, undercutting actually this low as well, and finding support near the 10-week and finishing right near all-time highs, if not all-time highs here, and we are in a strong stage 2 uptrend. The expectation is sideways or higher. Looking at the IWM, once again, the expectation is sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend. Looking at GBTC, the Bitcoin Trust, this doesn't look great, but potentially a 2-2 reversal through this high here, and you really want to see it hold this low right here, and this is not in a stage 2 uptrend at this point. Looking at the Ethereum Trust, this is acting better, 2 inside weeks now, and we'll see if we can kind of push through these highs. Decent closing range here, and overall the expectation is pretty much just sideways, but potentially sideways or higher if it can make it through these highs right there. Looking at the FFTY, nice action here, finishing pretty much right near the top of the week's trading range, and the expectation is sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend at this point. Looking at gold, nice action here. It was a down week, but overall a nice close off the lows here. The expectation is sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend, but if this can kind of start to curl up the 30-week line here, that would start a new stage 2 uptrend. And lastly, looking at the VIX, still decreasing here below 17, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a quick pop next week, but overall it is constructive that it's getting lower overall, but we'll see what happens next week. So overall, nice action from many of these indexes, finishing near the top of the trading ranges, and pretty much the expectation for many of these is sideways or higher. So moving on to my focus list from this past week, DDS was the top performer, up 21.34%. Overall, a nice breakout here through this pivot, as well as the green line, which is the kind of monthly base here, and I believe that's almost a 6-year base. So nice breakout here on volume, and then basically 2 consolidation days to end out the week, so acting pretty well. BNTX, nice breakout here on this Wednesday, then an inside day consolidation day, no, it's not an inside day, but nice consolidation day on lower volume, and then a continuation on this Friday. TIGR as well, nice move on this day, 2-2 reversal, as well as a 3-bar break, and moving through this pivot, and then nice continuation, although not the greatest close off the highs here on this Friday. UPST we talked about, Coursera, trying to do something, but still struggling with this pivot right here. So this move right through this high volume close and this high, that's when a strong push off the lows here, and maybe the start of the right side of this IPO base can begin. But overall, nice volume coming in on this Friday, although not a great close off the highs. Crocs still just going sideways, high volume on this day right here, and definitely want to see it move through this high and then challenge kind of this pivot to start something, and then eventually challenge these all-time highs. Snow going sideways, definitely on my radar for next week. Kind of a fake out here on this Wednesday, and yeah, it still has to challenge this high volume close and win and stick above it, but it is above this kind of short-term, or it's not quite above this short-term resistance at about 242 or so back here within the base. FNV, nice push on this Friday, 2-2 reversal, as well as a 3-bar break to the upside, but not the greatest volume. SC we talked about, EFX still just going sideways below this DTL. NAAIM also a 2-2 reversal, but I don't like this gap down here on volume, and then not much conviction on this day. A pretty poor close on lower volume. RH, not much going on here, just kind of leaked here, broke to the downside after this tightness, and fake breakout on this Tuesday. CPNG also leaking to the downside, but it is on pretty low volume, so we'll see if this can kind of reverse higher and then challenge this pivot at around 41.5, 42. And lastly, crowd we already covered. So overall, nice performances at the top of the list. DDS, BNTX, TIGR, all above 10% gainers. UPST also pretty strong if you got it early on this 2-2 reversal. And make sure you guys tune in later today when I'll be posting my next list of ideas. And moving now on to sentiment, we can see we had an increase last week in my sentiment surveys, up from 56.2% bullish to now 62.1% bullish. That is getting a little bit high for my liking. And looking at the pull-call ratio, this is still quite low, although we did see an increase late last week. But still, this is very, very low at this point, although that's really become the norm the past 8 months or so. Looking at the Bulls versus Bears poll, you can see we had a slight increase here, but still it's near the kind of lower end of the range since the March correction. And finally, look at the NAAIM exposure index. You can see an increase from 68.3 to now 82.27. So an increase there as well. Not super extended here, but hopefully this doesn't get into the 90s and 100s even. And as I always say, this is a kind of secondary indicator after analyzing the price action of the indexes, leading stocks, all of that. So looking now at the IBD Big Picture article, the headline is Stock Market Rallies on Lukewarm Jobs Data, Falling Rates, DocuSign Soars on Earnings, Gives Buy Signal. So they discuss how they're kind of resuming the uptrend, as I am as well, based on the nice action off that upside reversal, the reaction to the gap down, and then a very strong day to end the week. However, volume was lower than Thursday, which is one thing to keep in mind. They talk about some stocks here, the kind of poor jobs numbers, the FFTY increased nicely on Friday, and QFIN as well had a very strong day, but it's still within the 5% buy zone, although I recommend, or at least I follow kind of a 2% buy zone. I don't want to buy too extended. And they also talk about UPST as well, but how it reversed from that buy point. They discussed DocuSign, which had a very strong move during this kind of longer term base it's in, and Google was up as well. So their current outlook is uptrend resumes with 6 distribution days on the S&P 500 and 4 on the Nasdaq. Lastly, we've got the Wishing Well blog GMI signal, which is still green since May 26th, and the GMI score on Thursday was a strong 6 out of 6, although Dr. Wish did point out that the red, white, blue pattern, if we had a bad Friday, would have ended, but since we had a strong end to the week, this is likely intact. So overall, taking everything into account, my current view is a confirmed uptrend, and we'll see if we can kind of get some follow through, see some industry groups kind of form up as potential leading groups, and I'll be looking to increase my exposure at this time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel. I'll see you guys in future videos.